My name is Diana Laboy-Rush, and I currently serve as the Senior Product Marketing Manager at the Math Learning Center, a nonprofit dedicated to improve math education through visual learning. And my career is long and varied. We don't have enough time to hear about that. But I do want to let you know a little bit about my background. I'm an electrical engineer and I have a master's in engineering management. My specific area of expertise is the front end of innovation, which means you will often find me in roles working on a product that is breaking the mold. I'm always happy to talk about my career, but I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to focus on the topic of role models and how that formed my decision to go into tech. I might need someone to do the slides for me. I can do that. Okay. And I'm already over time. A little bit about me. My ethnic background, my migration story. I'm full-blood Puerto Rican, which means I can trace my Spanish roots to the Spaniards who colonized the island of Puerto Rico, as well as my African roots to slaves sold to landowners around that time. And through the stories told to me as a child, I know that I have Taino roots. My family is a member of the native tribe of Taino Indians. It was my maternal grandfather with a 5th grade education and a vision of entrepreneurship that our family was able to put down roots in San Francisco, California, where he worked odd jobs to make a living for his family. In this way, I feel a really strong connection to the immigration crisis right now. It's why I try to use my voice whenever I can on the issue from a place of privilege, knowing I do not ever have to worry about being sent home. I'm a US-born citizen, and I have all of the rights as a US-born citizen. And that's my privilege. I was going to do a little thing on checking my privilege, which I like to do. I don't have time to do that. If we have time in the questions, we'll do that. The reason I would do that, let's click to the next slide, is the story that I'm going to tell you is one of a lot of privilege. I had a lot of privilege in my life. But I want to share a moment in time when I had a dramatic shift in how I viewed my role in the workplace. It was at an event just like this, where there was a panel of women of color in leadership roles in tech. This woman, Dixie Gar, was the first speaker, and she opened the talk with this quote, which turned my whole world upside down. I no longer thought of being a woman, and for me, being Hispanic, as something to be ashamed of. It was at this moment that I realized I associated shame with my gender and ethnicity, and I didn't even know it. This event, this speaker gave me permission to own my experiences as a Latina as an asset instead of a curse. So 20 years later, I'm all too conscious of how important my voice is, especially when my background as a Latina or as a woman gives me a unique perspective in almost every professional situation I work in. One that would never be introduced if I weren't there. And ultimately, this shift in perspective gives me the confidence to speak up on touchy subjects when my view is the missing piece. So next slide. I want to know by a show of hands how many of you have had the experience of being the only something in the room. Awesome. Okay. Next question. How many of you have been in a room and known you hold a position that bucks consensus, which means you're the only one in the room that believes this. Everybody else believes something else. Anybody been in that situation? You're the only one. Did you vocalize it? Who vocalized it? Good for you. Because that's really hard. And that's what this quote really makes me think about. It really speaks to why events like this are so important. For me, it answers the question, what is diversity? Why is it so important to have a diverse workforce? I can pick any number of innovations to prove this point, but I like the story of Stephanie Kolek, who's the inventor of Kevlar. She discovered bulletproof fiber Kevlar by accident in the 1960s while searching for something lightweight for use in car tires. and she was working as a chemist at DuPont, researching polymers. And without the contribution of a courageous woman chemist, our law enforcement, military troops, and first responders would not have the safety equipment to do their jobs today. It was a courageous woman chemist. So to me, this quote really sums up why it's so important to have a diverse workforce. I'll take the next slide. Anybody hear of the quiet crisis? Okay, I first heard of the quiet crisis when I read The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. There was a chapter specifically outlining the looming talent crisis in the US. And it was the first time I ever heard the gender tech ratio described as an economic problem. And after that, my whole world changed. I was fascinated because it was something that I could get my head around. But for you, this is the situation. You heard earlier that less than 2% of working professional engineers today are Latinas. That is a crazy number. But let's start at the top. How many graduates of engineering programs in 2019 are women? 20%. Those who are working as engineers, there's only 11%. And so something's happening. There's something happening. When we look at the numbers of engineering graduates who are of Latin descent, most of us here know that the demographic in the US is growing. The Hispanic population is growing. We're over 40% of the population right now. So a 4.3% of the graduates being Latino, that is not right. There's a mismatch. There's a problem. We'll take the next slide. This is really the reason why women like me and the other panelists have such a hard time finding role models and mentors to help us and sponsor us. But when you start to dig into this research, what you find is that there's a systemic problem. There are important transition points in the STEM pipeline where supports can be applied to plug the leaks. It becomes a question of what are the factors that are preventing women from choosing STEM careers, and what are the reasons they are choosing to leave a STEM career? And then, how do you combat those factors with research-based programs? And when it comes to recruitment and retention of women, once they've entered the workplace, the most critical factor is to plugging the leaky pipeline is the presence of mentors and sponsors, which is why I feel it's such an important topic. Next slide. So I thought now I'm going to share a little bit about my own childhood that I believe played a huge role in my decision to enter a tech field. To start, I was raised by a single mom, a single working mom who worked at NASA. She's sitting right here. Thank you, Mom. She spent much of her career as an astronaut trainer. That's her on the right. She's a scientist and a teacher, and her job was to teach astronauts how to run cutting-edge biological experiments in space. A huge part of what formed my view of the world is that I grew up in a NASA family. This meant we had special events with Mom's crew. Regularly, we referred to them by their first names. In the shuttle program, your mission crew becomes your family. Dinner conversation consisted of how the monkeys, frogs, chickens, and jellyfish responded to the tests, preparing them for space travel. My mom spent much of my high school years preparing her crew for STS-40, which was not only the first shuttle mission with 3 female crew members, but also was the first mission to fly a space lab module solely dedicated to biological experiments. Interesting side note, STS-40 launched and landed in June of 1991, the month and year I graduated from high school. And my mom volunteered at the all-night graduation party and got on a flight the next morning for the launch of the mission she worked on for 5 years. So I know now how this impacted the opportunities I was given in my career, and it doesn't end because I'm standing here talking to you right now about it. And while I wasn't raised by my father, I was very close to my Laboy family, and I have a cousin who's older than me. She's the firstborn grandchild. And Diana was born and raised in Ponce, Puerto Rico, and she decided to study civil engineering right out of high school. She had the added challenge of having to study engineering in Spanish and in English in order to come to work on the mainland. Later, she finished her master's in civil engineering at University of Texas, and she's now one of the lead engineers for the city of Kansas City, Kansas. And this is one of her co-projects. I should add, we have a handful of engineers in our family now, most of which are women. Next slide. So not only did I have the benefit of two strong Latina role models right in my own family, I also have my NASA family that served as strong role models for me. The first two women on this slide are Ray and Millie, two of the three women who flew STS-40 in June of '91. Ray was already a well-known physician and surgeon before being selected as part of the first group of astronauts to include women. She flew on 3 space shuttle flights as mission specialist. Millie was a molecular biologist and flew aboard only the STS-40. She did 1 flight. Hopefully some of you recognize the third picture here on the very top left. Can anyone tell me who it is? So before she became an astronaut, Ellen Ochoa was a researcher at NASA Ames Research Center, which is where her and my mom first met. She applied to be an astronaut 3 times before being accepted by NASA in 1990. In between applications, she got her pilot's license and continued her research in optics. And in 1993, Ellen Ochoa became the first Hispanic woman to go to space when she served on a 9-day mission aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery. And I had the humbling opportunity to speak on a panel with Ellen, again, thanks to my NASA connection, and to hear about how her life changed history. That was an honor. So I'll just finish up. I know I'm probably over time right now, but I've had other professional mentors that I don't have time to talk about. I also have some proteges because I really believe in mentoring and role modeling, if some of them are in the audience. But can you go to the next slide? I just wanted to, in closing, finish with a few takeaways for all of you here from what the research tells us about how to increase the numbers of women in tech. I talked about how important role models were for me in my decision. You'll see here it is one of the most critical factors for women when considering a career. If you can't see it, you can't be it. However, we also need to do a few things to improve women's chances of being successful in a tech career. My message is that this must begin as early as possible. From a very early age, we have to teach children to have a growth mindset. At the Math Learning Center, the one thing that makes us cringe is when we hear a student, a parent, or even a teacher say, well, I was never really good at math. Because math is a skill. And it's the language of technology. And it can be very abstract. However, you would never allow your child to say, I was never really good at tying my shoes, so I'll just wear slip-ons. Or, I've never really been good at walking, so I've just decided to skip for the rest of my life. So this is how we feel about math at the Math Learning Center. Kids should be taught that if they have trouble with something, they can push through. Some call it grit. It can be taught. It's critical in the tech field. As a woman, as a Latino, as a Latina, it is absolutely necessary. Secondly, we need to focus on the years of 0 to 5. Children are learning from the moment they're born. Research says that girls who were not given building toys, Legos, Kinects, and enter school with lower development of their visual spatial skills. Imagine all of those hours of play from 0 to 5 as learning opportunities. And buy the girls in your life Legos instead of Barbies. Sorry. Finally, I'll say it again, young women will only choose a career that they think they can achieve. If they've never seen a Latina scientist, a young Latina will never imagine herself inventing Kevlar or doing experiments in space. Be a mentor, find a mentor, because you have to see it to be it. And that's all I have.